Good morning, Bitcoiners. I don't know. Did I do something wrong here? 1 second. For some reason, I'm not. Oh, there we go. Found the chat. Found the chat. P-Man Van. I'm back in Montreal. Good morning, all. How you doing? How you doing? Boo Boo. Not the first today, but always near the top. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Indeed. We love the morning. We love the morning. Morning, Bitcoiners. Morning, bud. Boo Boo says, so grateful to be here. Thank you. I'm grateful to be here as well. It's the best. And I'm grateful for an incredible sunrise. A little cloudy in Montreal, but we're going to be okay, right? Bitcoin's running no problem. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. Yeah, a bit of rain. So I left Vermont and it's getting a little hot. I had a tough night's sleep the other day because it was, pretty hotter than Barbados. Believe it or not, we're hot here in Vermont and Quebec. But with the rain coming, it's kind of like camping out at the farm sometimes, right? You're always dealing with stuff. So I just had enough. You're not here for that. You're not here to hear about which studio I'm in or anything like that, right? You're interested in Moscow time. Let me just see a few of these comments. Hey, people, spoiler alert. Sun was up from rise to set once again today. It is indeed a spoiler alert. Yeah. Beardy Day has a good morning to all doing Bitcoin. We are doing Bitcoin big time. IKEA mug, maybe Bitcoin Graffiti asks. I'm unsure. This apartment that I rent in Montreal came furnished. So I don't know. I don't know where this stuff comes from. Block height, 797,586 blocks. Thank you for that, boo-boo. We love it. Foggy in Philadelphia. Whoops, the thing came in. Moscow time. Coming up, P-Man. Foggy Philadelphia. Okay, Joe. Assalamu alaikum, Muslim Bitcoiner says. Life is indeed beautiful, Justin. Life is indeed beautiful. I am here for the thumbnail. I had a lot of trouble with the thumbnail today. The appeals system. So Midjourney, anytime it looks a little gross or you're doing some violence, like it wouldn't give me the eye shut. I tried to make the eye shut many, many times with many different prompts. Wouldn't do it. And mostly was not giving me anything because it will flag it for being not good. But then you can appeal, and then it usually gets accepted if it's not really bad. Most of these would have been accepted, but the appeal function was broken this morning, or stressed out, or whatever was going on. It wasn't working. So, but luckily, just before I came, it started to figure appeals out, and I was able to get. I had a few. I tried Allegory of the Cave stuff a little bit, and it just couldn't get the scene. It just kept looking like sun coming into a cave and a bunch of people looking. So, those are my two models. Think it's still good. Yeah. I like it too. I'm just saying some of the processes. You really gotta push Midjourney sometimes to get what you want, and then you got to just accept what it gives you from time to time. So this is more just like an AI prompt engineering, sharing the trials and tribulations. I probably produced 30 images to get this one. So there were a bunch that were similar, but I like this one. So thank you, V. I appreciate it. Now let's get to Moscow time. We got some good Moscow times today. We've been talking about that Sound of Freedom movie. So, it actually beat. So it didn't. Most movies that come from studios will come out on a Thursday in America. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is where you get your big box office. So when they come out Thursday night is when they're really big. Like Indiana Jones was supposed to be big. So they had Thursday night screenings. Nobody went. No one cared. And then it had a terrible weekend. And then because Sound of Freedom is not from one of the major studios, it's from a studio called Angel Studios, which is, picking up steam. It didn't go in the normal release schedule. So it was released actually on July 4th on the US holiday on Tuesday. So not common. And it was only released in half the screens that Indiana Jones is playing. And Indiana Jones is playing in nearly 5,000 screens. and Sound of Freedom in only 2,500. Anyway, Sound of Freedom whooped it, totally way ahead in box office. It's now the #1 movie in America on like a shoestring budget and not even a known studio. Whooped Indiana Jones. Amazing. But not everyone's so happy about this change of studios. There's some people who aren't happy. So we get Moscow Time out of it, right? Thank you for producing Moscow Time, Hollywood. So this is a review from The Guardian, right? They're not happy about this box office thing. Movies. Sound of Freedom, the QAnon adjacent thriller seducing America. Jim Caviezel stars as a hero trying to stop child traffickers as in a paranoid movie turning into a surprise box office hit. The paranoid movie. Because I guess human trafficking just isn't a problem, right? It's not solved. We don't catch anyone, so how can it be a problem? We're not arresting or catching people for child trafficking and human trafficking, so clearly not a problem. What are they talking about, right? The actual writer of the review from The Guardian, of course, he's some kind of like critic of culture and all this shit, right? So here's what he says, right? Here's me on Sound of Freedom, the QAnon adjacent thriller that pretends to be a real movie, much in the same way a pregnancy crisis center pretends to be an actual clinic. Brazilians are already accusing me of pedophilia on Instagram. Enjoy! So Charles Bramisco, welcome to Moscow Time. You will be first in line for UBI, I think. I think he's going to be the first in line to be like, please give me food stamps. No, I need food stamps. Please, Bitcoiners, give me food stamps. So that'll happen, right? Normally we don't do punchlines in Moscow Time, but you got to add a little bit to it, right? So Erwin Lacour, he's the breathing guy, right? Really good breathing guy. Not as famous as the other one with the breathing. Aubrey Huff is no, that's the base. I keep mentioning that guy's name. There's some other doctor who's really good at breathing. He does the two big in. I do this a lot. It helps, right? Big in, two of them, and then one big exhale, and it really works. It's a good breathing technique. I can't remember the name of the doctor who's been, but he goes on all the podcasts. Erwin Lacour, another one. And Erwin says here, this movie is humiliating Disney's stupid woke production out of the water with only 1/10 of the budget and only half the number of movie theaters. What does that say? A shifting point has been reached in America's consciousness. People want truth, not propaganda and brainwashing. I would agree with Erwin. Now, people still reacting to the judgment on the government not being able to deputize big tech to censor and do what they're not allowed to do constitutionally and silence Americans. So the New York Times just not quite done reacting to this. They had to add one more. I know I've read a lot of Moscow Times based in this order, but here's a new one. Disinformation researchers fret about fallout from judge's order. They said a restriction on government interaction with social media companies could impede efforts to curb false claims about vaccines and voter fraud. Guys, you're in big trouble. You're gonna get impeded from hearing false claims. The New York Post, this one's great. Supermarket employee fired for recording 3 men stealing $500 in laundry detergent. So I've been wanting to try this. Ever since I heard that that Canadian terrible clothing company, Lululemon, fully made of plastic, all of their clothes. Lululemon, right? They don't have a policy to tell on shoplifters. They just have like a special insurance code that they zap. They don't want to call police. Remember, they fired those people. So I got a Lululemon like a block away. I honestly feel like just going in and taking a bunch of shit just to see what happens. Just to see. Why is this not happening? Why are people not pranking Lululemon all the time? We know they don't get you in trouble for stealing. They're against prosecution of thieves. Please try it out. Now, the only reason I don't is because I don't think Montreal is actually a failed state like most American cities. Like, I think I would be prosecuted and caught here in Montreal just because people are still pretending like the world is normal. Thieving is still not okay in Montreal. So anyway, we'll see. Here's another one. Now, normally, again, this is a strange Moscow time because I don't like putting punchlines, but I have to here, right? I kind of have to because the Washington Post tried to interject a punchline of its own. So everyone's still talking about this Supreme Court thing with the students in school and affirmative action. And everybody knows, it was Asian families that brought this forward. They were the ones being most prejudiced against. So it was an Asian person sort of initiated thing and a big victory, right? So Washington Post, it boggles the mind. It boggles the mind. This is what they did, right? So they wrote an opinion piece about this. And as they start the opinion piece, they have to say satire. All right? They have to say satire. Because here's what comes next. Supreme Court, I am tired of people who have had adversity and obstacles handed out to them liberally since birth being treated differently than those of us who haven't. Right? So the headline is, stop penalizing people who never had to overcome adversity. Right? So no Asian people have adversity. They don't have it, right? And imagine they have to say satire at the beginning. Now, in case you didn't know, satire doesn't work if you have to say satire. If you have to tell people it's satire, it's not satire, right? It's not. So contrast that with an actual satirical headline based on this affirmative action judgment, because the Babylon Bee did one. And then this is funny, right? So satire should be a little funny. Is it funny to say, I am tired of people who've had adversity and obstacles handed out to them liberally since birth being treated differently than those of us who haven't? Because everybody knows, everyone in America knows, life is so peachy and perfect for all those Koreans who come here and get screamed and yelled at by their parents every day to study, and all those Chinese people who have to work their asses off nonstop, and all those Indian people. What a dream, what privilege they have in America. Oh my God, what a great life. It's so easy. Why can't everyone have it that easy? So they have to actually say it, right? Satire. Now here's the Babylon Bee, right? This is actual. They don't have to tell you this is satire. This is funny, right? So what does the Babylon Bee say? Asian Americans celebrate affirmative action ruling with 5-minute study break. It's pretty good. Pretty good. That's satire, right? Asian Americans celebrate affirmative action ruling with a 5-minute study break. Love it. Hilarious. Hilarious, right? All right, last bit of Moscow time here before we get into the fun news. Funny news today, a lot of funny news. Now, this is only just to reiterate a prediction I made probably over a month ago, that I said because RFK was coming up in the polls, you were going to get spoon-fed a steady supply of fake news about him, and he would have his own little separate carve-out in Moscow time because a lot was coming, right? So here's Intelligencer. RFK's inside job, how a conspiracy spewing literal Kennedy posing as a populist outsider jolted the Democratic Party. Just look at these words. Conspiracy spewing, literal, posing, populist outsider. It's pretty good. But the New York Times couldn't be outdone. Intelligencer, come on. You're no New York Times. You're no New York Times when it comes to Moscow time. So because BuzzFeed also has trouble financially and they're not really producing as many articles, New York Times is jumping into that market of listicles. Right? It's all about listicles now. So here's their listicle. 5 noteworthy falsehoods Robert F. Kennedy has promoted. Right? 5 falsehoods Robert Kennedy promoted. He has falsely linked vaccines to various medical conditions. Right? So that's one. Right? So it's false to say that any medical conditions have come from vaccines, because of course this writer knows. Right? Who's the writer called again? Dang, I didn't save their name. Doesn't matter. This one's good. He has made baseless claims about a connection between gender dysphoria and chemical exposure, right? So he's made baseless claims about a connection between gender dysphoria. So it's all natural, right? It's all natural. And of course, here they cite his interview with Jordan Peterson, which has already been removed from the internet or from YouTube. I love this one. He has falsely linked antidepressants to school shootings, right? Falsely linked. He's the first person who said it. How do we know it's false? Right? He has bolstered a conspiracy theory that the CIA assassinated his uncle, right? Here's another one. And he has said Republicans stole the 2004 presidential election, right? I didn't hear about that one, but I mean, I don't think we've had elections in America. It's been a long time. I mean, even RFK's uncle stole the election. We all know that, right? Everyone's aware that John F. Kennedy probably didn't win the 1960 election. But I don't know about the 2004 one. I don't really, I don't really put much stock in any of them at this point. So again, the 5 were the vaccines. So that's apparently all, like, they figured it out at the New York Times. It doesn't matter. Gender dysphoria, nah, they have that figured out too. We know why there's such an increase in trans in America. Come on. The antidepressants, which I think is a really good thing to follow up on. Anyway, just look at the words here. It's all about skeptic, purveyor, conspiracy, misinformation, long shot, falsehoods. It's all that kind of language. So there you go. That's our Moscow time for today. Robert F. Kennedy getting his own special carve out from now on in Moscow time. As long as I find it there, you're going to hear it, because they're pretty funny. They're really funny. And again, the 2016 election was one of the greatest nights of my life because I was such a big Trump fan and predicted from the beginning he was going to win. So there's a lot of like, you're right, you got it right. And it's pretty fun, right? And those videos that were compiled for months later of the Trump can't win catalog, and it was just everyone Moscow timing Trump's candidacy, people laughing at him and this and that. I probably watched, that thing ended up getting millions of views, thousands of them were me, because it didn't stop being funny for like a year, right? He's not going to win. It was so fun. I want to relive it. I think we're going to get to relive it with RFK. So the more Moscow time stuff we get, the funnier it's going to be, right? All right. So now everyone talking about Zuckerberg's, Meta Threads, right? So Zuckerberg came out with the Meta Threads. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. How's it going? Well, what we've heard is a bunch of people were censored. They pre-censored a lot of MAGA people. So the MAGA people who signed up found out they couldn't even get on, right? If you were like a trolly MAGA person on Twitter, you were just not welcome, right? So all kinds of people there talking about that. Already threads were censored and edited. And then Mike Solana from Pirate Wires, who we love, wrote a Substack piece on it today saying Twitter's final boss, Zuckerberg, wages war. Meta goes to war with Twitter, Threads meteoric rise, a battle for the heart of amphetamine-crazed shit posters and the future of American speech. So he goes into this just sort of describing the background around why this was done and what it means for Zuckerberg and Meta, who's been there, what we're seeing so far. He definitely gets into the reason why this was even possible. And what he says is it's Elon's only mistake since taking over Twitter was this war he waged against Substack and Substack's Twitter clone, which they have, which I don't remember the name now. So Substack has this Twitter clone, and that's when Elon suppressed the links to Substack. And so Solana saying here, this was a big mistake from Elon Musk. And it did open the door to these other opportunities, Mastodon, Hive. Oh yeah, Post was the one from the thing. So, but none of these things worked because they didn't have a user base. So he goes in to say, well, Meta has the user base, so they don't have to bootstrap from 0 users. They're bootstrapping from billions of users. And that's why you saw Mark Cuban and all kinds of people there yesterday. And, we've got, I guess, Ellen DeGeneres signed up yesterday and said, welcome to gay Twitter. And that's kind of where people are headed with this. They're trying to see it as a real, like, Twitter is now for the right-wing people and Threads are for the left-wing people or the Democrats, right? How long that will stay in place, not sure. You already see a lot of people say that the reason why Zuck said it himself, the reason why Twitter failed is because people are too mean, right? So Mark Cuban comes out and says, hey, Zuck, you sure You have to open this up to everyone. It's pretty nice right now. Amazing people on here. So this is Mark Cuban saying to him, the goal is to keep it as friendly as it expands. I think it's possible and will ultimately be the key to its success. That's one reason why I think Twitter never succeeded as much as I think it should have. And we want to do it differently. All right. So what are my thoughts on it? Well, here we go. First of all, the way I look at this, it's not a money-making thing, right? And everything that I see that Zuckerberg has failed at recently has been a money-making thing. So he's jumped into the coin thing, right? That was to make money. When he got into crypto and he wanted to have a stable coin and all that, that was a stupid failure, right? And everybody knew it. I was not angry, but the first time I saw Facebook come out with Diem or whatever the hell it was called at the time, I was like, oh shit. Because what I saw were all the politicians understanding the playing field for the first time. So I went down to DC the minute it was announced. It was announced and I was in the Caribbean on a thing, and then came back to America, scheduledly came back to America. And then all this stuff started. That was right at the same time that Trump said, I'm not a fan, right, of Bitcoin. So this all happened in the summer of 2019. And so we put together a quick event while they started the hearings in the Congress in America. So we all went down to DC. We produced a little show for CoinDesk, and right away, when we were done the show, right, when the show was over, when the testimonies were done, and I had to do a television hit. I think I went on CNN or one of these things. What about this meta thing? And what I said was very simple. I said, it looks like they have now communicated the whole battle plan for Bitcoin. So if we survive this, we're going to make it. This is basically the last chance to keep the rocket ship Bitcoin from getting into orbit and having exit velocity and not being bound by earthly forces anymore. So at a certain point, I was like, oh, this is risky, because now there's no denying what Bitcoin can do. And indeed, that's where you start getting Hillary Clinton saying things like it can destabilize nations. That's where that talking point came from at that time. Because indeed, the Facebook story, now I don't believe it's Facebook, but once you saw the power of Facebook coming into the money game, it immediately sort of pointed to Bitcoin in a way. Right now, Bitcoin did great during this because it was able to contrast itself with shitcoins and stable coins and everything else. And if you remember, that's where the word shitcoin actually became normalized and popularized, because on that testimony, you had Milton Demers, who I worked with for many years. So I took the train down there and back in that whole thing in DC at that time. And Melton sort of just said shitcoin on the floor of the Congress, and or not the floor, but the committee floor, the committee mic, and everyone laughed, but it sort of normalized the usage of the word, right? So so that's just one example, right? So but that's another thing where it shut down all the big waste, everybody got fired. Daniel Harper is reminding me here of the metaverse, why they called the company Meta. So he's got now a string of just huge money losing failures, right? Let's just admit that. But would you get, now I could see why you would do them. You might make money, right? Now I get why you would go into metaverse and a coin and all that. You can make money. Can you make money on Twitter? No, right? He's saying, oh, because people were not nice, that's why no one made money. But it's not really a money-making thing, right? Ask Elon Musk if it makes money. It's never made money. It's a place to argue and debate. Elon can make a bit of money by firing all these people and maybe eking out a bit of a profit, but it's not a money-making thing. So do you think that Zuckerberg is getting involved in this to like make money? No, he knows how to make money, right? You don't get into a Twitter clone to make money. I think, and this is a bit of mind reading, but I don't know. But to me, it sort of tells the story of what's going on here. That there's probably a lot of pressure, political pressure on him from Democrats and other people who don't want to see what's on Twitter anymore, right? They can't even look at it because it's just loss after loss after loss. the amount of emotional shift, and even I would say mental health shift that's happened in America since Elon took over has been up and to the right, very positive. Now, it might look like things are going terribly in inner cities and with some people, but I'd say overall, we're in much better shape than we were before Elon took over Twitter. I'd say the Elon purchase of Twitter has been a catalyst for less antagonistic and divisive debate in America, weirdly, right? Because there's now a forum to have conversations, and not everyone's getting tossed off for wrongthink. And that was really toxic because the way things were before, you didn't really know where you stood. Things, you didn't want to trust anything, right? Things got really bad. Now that Twitter has changed a bit, there seems to be some positivity coming from it. And that's what I see, right? Now, if you take this Zuck situation here with his Twitter clone and what's going to happen, and first of all, there is a reason why, and this is what Mike Solana gets into, there's a reason why visual and rhetorical social media diverged. They're not the same beast, right? People who want to look at food and boobs and muscles are not the same people as the people who want to look at, 140 characters, which it was originally in Twitter, wordsmithing, right? It's not quite as sexy, right? It's not quite as there's not quite as much dopamine available and not as much dopamine to be dealt, and not as much dopamine to be consumed. Now, there is a lot of dopamine to be consumed on Twitter, usually about arguing and outrage. Pictures don't really do it, right? Unless they're funny memes, of course. So, are they going to be able to capture these folks? Because they've got, indeed, the billions of people using it on Facebook, but do they have anything to say? I don't think so, right? So my prediction is this is more or less a bunch of Democrats that can't go on Twitter anymore because of the cognitive dissonance that it triggers. They want another place where they can get back to the normal censoring, the normal filtering of information. And that's why I called today, can meta threads stitch people's eyes closed? Is it going to work? Can you put the toothpaste back in the tube, metaphorically speaking? I don't think so. I don't think this dog's going to hunt. It's not going to make money. And it's got to have a persistent use of that user base talking about stuff. Can they do it? I don't know. There's going to be a lot of censorship there, like we've already seen. I don't like the now Nostr is different because Nostr is really about Bitcoin, but I don't like truth. Like, that's not interesting. Or what's the other one that they shut down for a little while? Parler, Parler, the one that Kanye bought. I don't go on there. You want the debate. I go on to look for Moscow time. I go for the laughs. I go to look at Democrats and laugh at them, right? Or not even Democrats, but you know what I mean. We love Kennedy Democrats. So, you go in there to laugh at these people and to see what's happening, to see what they're thinking, to see what they're talking about, arguing about. When we think about the people who are there and the sort of institutionally endorsed talking points that are coming out of the people backing it, promoting it, and Zuckerberg himself, right? Then the chance of it, I think, without any debate, without any conflict, without any search for truth, I just don't think it's going to make it. So now there's enough people that just indeed want to look at pictures of boobs and steaks and vegan salads or something like that. Now they'll still be there. The same people on Instagram, they'll probably be in bigger numbers than on Twitter, but it still doesn't really drive the conversation. Like, what is this breakup all about in the morning? I go on Twitter and I look at what interesting people on Twitter had to say. And that's how I get my news. I don't actually read sources, right? I don't go and read the New York Times and say, well, that's good and that's no good. I look at a handful of people and I look at what they looked at. So I am a news aggregator of news aggregators. I don't go and consume this garbage. And I don't even have an Instagram account. I haven't had Facebook since 2010, maybe 2011. Like, I don't use that thing. Once the boomers came, I got the hell out of there. And I don't even know what's going on Instagram. I don't care. Like, it's never done anything for me. You know, my wife keeps a private Instagram for the children and our family, just to talk about our trips and travels, but only to friends. Like, we don't, you know, it would go my kids are too cute. It would go super viral. And I don't want that on Instagram, right? So I don't want to be an influencer on Instagram with beautiful pictures of my lifestyle and family. That would be the worst, right? So I'm probably never going to sign up for Threads, but I also don't think it's going to be successful, and I don't think it's going to put us back where we were in 2021 and 2020 and 2019. It looks like another Zuck failure. He's got a string of them now, right? It's not the first one where he's just like, oh, I'm going to do this thing and lose a bunch of money. So I see more of this. Now, I respect Zuckerberg as a CEO in some ways, right? I think he would. I was asking my colleague at Bitcoin Magazine yesterday, Alex McShane, who, if you didn't know, was a MMA fighter and still fights judo, is a martial artist, is a very disciplined fighter, totally into the martial arts. He's the reason why we get so many UFC fighters at our shows, like Ben Askren and Cyborg. And these are all sort of personal friends of his, right? So he's always been able to go out and get all of these folks. So I was asking him yesterday who would win between Zuck and Elon. And he said more or less what I thought, except, and he added a bit that I didn't know about the cage match, you know. He said he thinks Zuck could definitely get him in a chokehold, and that he's really talented at what he's doing, the fighting. And I would agree with that. To me, Zuckerberg looks like I'm not fighting him, even though he's much smaller than me. You know, I'm 6'1", 190 and in good shape. I'm not fighting him, and I'm much bigger than him. Now, Elon's a little bit bigger than me, right? Weighs more and a little bit taller. But I didn't know this. Do you know that Elon Musk got in for one of his birthdays, he was in Japan and organized like a sumo fight where he fought sumo wrestlers. And that's why he still has neck trouble. The sumo guy got him good, and his neck is a bit messed up. And so I can't imagine that's why he can't really personally train very well anymore, and all these stuff. So I can't imagine it doesn't matter how big you are, an injured, kind of out of shape fella fighting with an in shape smaller guy, you know. All right. So we're going to move on from that, but I want to add one more thing because we're talking about social media. To be fair, Noster is not about Bitcoin. It just so happens that the initial user base is all Bitcoiners. Yeah, Justin. And what I mean is it's not about fighting. It's more about positively sharing Bitcoin cultural stuff. Now, I agree it's not just for Bitcoiners and anyone can use it, but it is predominantly used by Bitcoiners. And what I mean to say is Noster in this cycle isn't going to be where the stupid political stuff is debated, is what I mean, right? Like you're not going to get all of a sudden a bunch of Bitcoiners that want like Hunter Biden to be left alone to come on Noster and be like, oh, but didn't you hear what Zelensky said? He just needs a little more money, and we don't want to talk about Hunter. Like you're just never going to see that on Noster, right? You're never going to see anyone on Noster say, oh, you know, the Hunter Biden story is about a father's love and addiction, right? It's just not going to happen, right? If anything, Bitcoiners just don't care because they've already checked out of the fiat world and are already on to the positive things. You know, the thing that I don't know if any of you guys saw, I retweeted it, and it was something that Francis Pouliot tweeted yesterday about a Montreal famous actor, Xavier Dolan, who, you know, oh, he's so serious, artiste, you know, he's giving up his art form because what's the point? Global warming, it's so bad. I was just on Meta Threads, the world's going to shit. So he's quitting movies because what's the point, right? And Francis Pouliot contrasted that with how Bitcoiners think these days. It's like, I'm so happy to be alive. I want to have 1 million kids and seed a new dynasty. I can't wait to see what the world offers next, right? And that's really the whole game right there. And the Bitcoiners that are on Nostr are out there sharing antediluvian stories about the pyramids and everything we're going to learn about the world as we wipe away the blindfold that fiat put on our history. The amnesia that we have about ourselves, I think, caused by fiat payouts, payoffs, the organization of information laundering within the fiat system, which is really create these third-party, independent, expert things that were all funded by the fiat people. So the Smithsonian, for example, right? You can't trust a word that comes out of the Smithsonian. Not a word, not a word, right? So there you go. There you go. Oh yeah, Nostr is totally worth the effort. I go there every day, David. Nostr is the future. It really is, and especially just getting a sense of the operating system is really helpful, right? So yeah, Nostr's totally worth it. Totally worth it. Totally worth it. All right. So let's move on. The idea though that I had here is that the idea of sort of using this meta threads to close people's eyes falls into a line of, or a frame you can use to understand what's going on this summer and probably into the future, which is you're going to continue to see liberal people, people who don't want to, the same people who said to you, Bitcoin again, right? The same people that just don't want to look at what's happening around them. The same people who said paranoid about the sound of freedom, right? All these people, they're going to continue to run and hide in corners because you can't really handle the truth in some ways. It's too much for some people to handle. And it's what we've been talking about for a while here, that the ego part of admitting what's going on, that America is run by a crime family, and that, a lot of the things you thought about America and the world and experts and science and all of these things are not exactly what you were told, not exactly what you have come to believe. And the amount of recalibration you require today to put everything in its place is a lot. It annoys people and it causes them cognitive dissonance. So Twitter for many has become a symbol of cognitive dissonance. And so you've got to run away and hide, right? You've got to absolutely run away and hide. So you see that sort of all over, right? You can go and look at this case on Hunter and the cocaine, the cocaine story with Hunter Biden. So first of all, it looks like he even took cocaine in front of everyone on the Truman porch during July 4th. Now, I don't know. We've seen other people supposedly take bumps of coke in public. It looked like it to me. It was sort of scratching and like doing all this kind of stuff after. But now you also get the news coming out yesterday and Politico going with it, right? We'll probably never find out who did it, right? And they're all like, yeah, probably, right? That's just a pure form of persuasion, right? That's how you soften up the audience, soften up the room, right? We're never going to find it. So in a week, well, that's what everyone was saying, right? But remember, there isn't a square inch of the White House that doesn't have a camera attached to it, that doesn't have, some way of determining who went where. That there are no blind spots in the White House, right? So if someone wanted to know, they could, right? Now, who knows if it's Hunter's, but that they haven't come out and actually said it's, would it be so hard for Hunter Biden to come out and say, it wasn't me, unless it wasn't him, right? Have you heard any denials? Of course not, right? But you're going to continue to get people who will say, oh, this is all about addiction and a father's love, and leave Hunter alone, and what can he do? This is also the same Secret Service that helped Hunter hide his gun charges by saying, he didn't. They basically, the Secret Service inserted itself into Hunter's gun case and helped dump it in a trash can, and they helped cover for him for this, right? So again, the idea that so many respected institutions have been so openly complicit in this stuff is unbelievable, right? And people can't handle it. The next story that I'm bringing up today is with that Gal Luft guys. And the simulation is super winking at us with this Gal Luft story. So if you guys don't remember the Gal Luft story, he was an Israeli professor, probably a spook involved in the Biden's activities years ago. And it just so happens, this is a simulation piece. He is sort of one of the big, you know, futurists, let's say, of a de-dollarized world. That's like his academic specialty is de-dollarization. So apparently he was in the room when the Bidens made a deal with the Chinese and one eye, right? So we're talking about closing your eyes and we get one eye, right? One eye, right? We're talking about Bitcoin being a third eye, and these guys are worried about one eye, right? So old one, and he actually has one eye. He had a crippled eye, this guy. I've seen his picture now, the FBI guy. He has a totally crippled eye. So one eye, actually with one eye, not an example, not a euphemism. So this guy, Gal Luft, so he was arrested by the FBI in Cyprus when he was coming out to talk about the Bidens 2 or 3 months ago. We've been following it here at the Breakup, just saying, well, what's going on here, right? So now it turns out the missing witness, Gal Luft, has come public again, and he says, and this is from Kaneko the Great, Israeli professor Gal Luft, the missing witness in the Biden corruption investigation, accuses the Bidens of receiving bribes from individuals linked to Chinese military intelligence and using an FBI mole named One Eye to share classified information with CEFC China Energy. In an exclusive video obtained by Miranda Devine at the Post, Luft claims that he provided incriminating evidence to 6 officials from the FBI and the Department of Justice during a secret meeting in Brussels in March 2019. But he alleges it was covered up. According to Luft, he voluntarily informed the US government about a potential security breach and compromising information regarding Joe Biden, who was vying to be the next president at the time. However, instead of being recognized as a whistleblower, he claims to have become a target of the very same people he informed. Luft asserts that his recent arrest in Cyprus was an attempt to prevent him from testifying at the House Oversight Committee about the Biden family's alleged corruption. Luft denies, so the accusation and why they arrested him was that he's an arms dealer, right? So he says he's never been an arms dealer. I've never traded a bullet in my entire life, is what he says. He further states that nowhere in my indictment has the DOJ claimed or presented evidence that I bought, sold, shipped, or financed any weapons. Luft alleges that Joe Biden, shortly after his vice presidential term, attended a meeting at the Four Seasons Hotel in Washington, D.C. with his son Hunter and officials from the CEFC. Luft claims the account of the meeting was later corroborated by the famous laptop from hell belonging to Hunter Biden, which contained all the emails and receipts that was handed over to the FBI. According to Luft, CEFC was paying Hunter $100,000 a month and his uncle Jim $65,000 a month in exchange for their connections and the use of the Biden name to promote China's Belt and Road Initiative globally. You remember when they were like, no, he's a drug addict. He's a drug addict, right? But they're also saying he deserves to get paid $100,000 because of his talents. So he's a drug addict that isn't responsible for his actions and what he says when they said, oh, my dad is next to me, pay me the money. He's a drug addict who gets paid $100,000 a month for his family connections. You can't have it both ways. You can't, right? You could be a drug addict who's irresponsible, or you can get paid $100,000 a month for your expertise in energy, right? Or viruses or whatever the hell it is he's involved in. So according to Luft's, so they were supposed to promote the Belt and Road Initiative. So there you go. The story behind this missing Biden thing, and you got to see the picture of One Eye too. It's hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Colin Rugg says the Biden corruption whistleblower Luft recently went into hiding in fear for his life, reveals how a mole inside the FBI was tipping off Hunter Biden and his Chinese counterparts. Luft came to the Department of Justice to alert them of potential crimes being committed to the Biden family. However, instead of looking deeper into the matter, the DOJ worked to cover up Luft's allegations. Isn't it funny how the Department of Justice will serve in each and every crevice for a crime against Trump, but won't look at evidence into the Bidens, even if they were slapped in the face with it. So again, you have people who are literally hiding. They want to hide in a corner from what's going on in the world. Unfortunately for them, you simply can't hide from Bitcoin, right? You don't get to choose. Now, you can go ask the people in Eastern Europe who are waking up at record rates, right? You do not get to choose war. War comes to you. There is no schedule upon which, oh, it's wartime. No, war comes to you. And unfortunately, World War III is absolutely a psychological and economic war. And for people like this that will simply ignore all of the corruption in America, the bill will come due in money terms, financial terms, prestige terms. The ability of America to lead and others to follow looks like it's what's getting traded in order to make sure Hunter gets 100K a month, right? And that we don't question it. So the problems with hiding what's happening and not talking about it and suppressing it are only going to grow larger and larger, only going to create more and more of a void and a vacuum for Bitcoin to enter, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. And what is being created right now is a vacuum of truth because of the amount of lying that is being gaslit, shared, promoted, the amount of truth that is being suppressed, the amount of corners left to hide in are diminishing. That's the point of the Facebook Threads thing. They need another corner to hide in to not get the unpleasant news. But unfortunately, it will seep in from everywhere. Light goes around holes, bonus holes as well, as Robert Schmidt has reminded us, right? it goes around things, it goes over and all of that stuff. So it's what's happening, right? Tommy Murphy says, RFK will be the first president of the USA since Grant. I know what you're talking about, and maybe, yeah, and maybe. From there, think about what's going on now as far as ignoring the truth, right? The war in Ukraine's over. This is another corner that's being hidden. This is another way people's eyes are remaining closed, right? So this Austrian armed forces guy, Colonel Marcus Reisner, came out and said that the actual thing, the whole offensive is done. The counteroffensive is done. They can't win, right? It's failed. Here's what he says, and David Sachs breaks it down. He says, this attempt to put a positive spin on the Ukrainian counteroffensive is actually a series of enormous admissions. One, the offensive has failed. Call it the first phase if you want. It's the counteroffensive to date. Two, NATO military tactics do not work against Russian defenses. Wait, what? That's what David Sachs says. Wait, what? NATO can't penetrate Russian defenses? They don't work? That's not what I was told. I was told that it would be different. Three, he expects limited successes along the front line, but no major breakthroughs. But if Ukraine can't retake significant territory, that refutes the entire strategy of the counteroffensive. It also contradicts what Western publics who are financing the war were promised. So what's the strategy now, and why aren't we negotiating? Indeed, why aren't we negotiating? So it's another one of those cases where people are just going to ignore what's going on. They're not going to pay attention. It gets even worse. The one in France, right? So all this rioting in France. Look what the National Assembly just voted for in France. You don't even know what's going on in France anymore. It's become more of a black box in Ukraine, right? So 84-24 against. The French adopted Article 3 of the Justice Bill, which authorizes remote activation of cameras and microphones on telephones, other connected devices without the person's knowledge. So they can take over your phone now. That's it. It's done, right? So France, liberty, nope. That's over, right? That's over. So Prof. St. says, step one, allow disorder to fester into open riot. Step two, use riots to enact surveillance powers. Step three, keep the surveillance forever. You didn't hear it here first. You heard it here for the 1,000th time, but they keep going with this battle plan, and it keeps happening. So we'll see. It looks like the corners to hide in, while Meta Threads are offering a new one, that dog ain't gonna hunt. And I can't imagine it working for too long. The truth will seep through. All right, let's see what people got. So Jose saying, did you see the Lex Friedman interview with RFK? It was great. No, I didn't. I only caught a couple of minutes. It came out yesterday, right? So no, I didn't have a chance yet. I was traveling a bit yesterday. I might watch it a bit today, or I'll wait for some headlines that come out of it or some clips. Bud says he's getting out his word. He absolutely is. I noticed the minute I saw it, it already had, I think, 300,000 to 400,000 views, and it was only out for a couple of hours. So I imagine it's doing numbers, right? So seeing through the fiat filter, indeed, Johnny Rico, indeed. About to head out to Oak Ridge. See ya, Joseph Norwood. Catch us later. Damn, the Fed Watch is a lot of fun. I love doing it. It's not about money. It's about sending a message. No one is above the law. Just call them NPCs. They absolutely are. What's up, Austin? What's your 2024 highest price target? Yeah, I'm well into the millions now. I think we can justifiably predict $1 million Bitcoin in 2024. Not the same purchasing power as your $1 million. It would be like the equivalent of 300 to 500K of our what we used to think of. The first time we called for $1 million Bitcoin, the first time I called for $1 million Bitcoin would have been 2014. That's when, my mind sort of said, yeah, $1 million makes about sense if you take the whole global economy and divide it by Bitcoin and so it's not the same million as when I first predicted it. If this was like the 2015, 2016 schedule, my number would be, had we had no COVID, no quantitative easing, no repo rumble, none of that stuff, and a 2016 US dollar was equal to a 2023 US dollar, I would say 3 to 5, but million, seems like a nice number now. And it's a good psychological number, right? This next bump for Bitcoin is going to blow the psychology into the forefront, right? Because it's going to show that Bitcoiners were able to survive, predicted this outcome. We're sitting here telling everyone what's going on in France is like I said, for the 1,000th time, you've heard the battle plan, right? Foster dissent, take the dissent, get some powers out of it, keep the powers forever. It's Patriot Act again, right? The Secret Service are just government goons. I'd say there's probably I'd say it's a case by case scenario. I bet you the Secret Service guys, some of them anyway, working for Trump today are great. They're probably big patriots and love him. But if you listen to RFK, he'll tell you that it was a Secret Service agent that killed his dad, right? He even knows the person's name. So it exemplifies there is a crime family running. There is a crime family. Like, what are you supposed to say? Open your third eye. Indeed, V. Thus, Hunter Biden story is totally banana republic stuff. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's just the most obvious banana republic stuff. Biden probably will be the last U.S. core president because he has disgraced the office beyond repair, which is what we want. That's why we love Joe Biden. We love him. Remember, I'm a Joe Biden 2024 guy, right? Ahead of RFK. Sorry. We love RFK. We love him. But we love this. This is fast. This is accelerationism. No, that's not. I won't go that far. I would love to see RFK as president. But I'll take another 4 years of Biden. This is good. It's good. Very corruptible. Robert Schmidt talking about ye old bonus hole again, which we love. It's very funny. All right. That's all I got for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you're having a good Friday. Hope you have a good weekend. I'll see y'all tomorrow. I'll be in the city until Sunday. There'll be no show Sunday, obviously. We're not Sunday showing anymore. We got used to the day with the kids, and the kids love it. And the no rushing for the pancakes is a lot of fun. So there you go. All right. See you tomorrow, everyone. Peace. We'll end it with bonus hole.